Hi, Baldur, and thank you for joining me from your studio in Chicago. Um, if we just get down to it, uh, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you ended up uh, artist in Chicago?
My name is Baldur Helgason. Uh, I'm an Icelandic artist, and I studied in San Francisco. First, I studied at an art school in Iceland, and then I moved to San Francisco to get my master's degree. And when I was in San Francisco, I met my wife, who was from Chicago. And when we realized that I was an artist and was never going to make it any money, we couldn't afford living in San Francisco, so we ended up moving to Chicago to start a family in Chicago.
And in your art, what inspires you?
A lot of the time, music. I'll uh, hear like a snippet of a music lyric or a song lyric, and I'll write that down and think of like what would that lyric be as a painting, or and then just movies, shots from movies that stay with me, and also just art history. Like I spend a lot of times just flipping through books. I like have a little setup of books that I have laying around in the studio. So when I'm working for a show or for paintings, I tend to have them all spread out on the floor and just kind of like stealing little bits from old masters.
Mm, and how would you describe your creative process? How do you get from a blank canvas to a finished painting?
It differs from painting to painting and sometimes from show to show. Uh, a lot of the times I'll have those references laying around. I'll start with the blank canvas and then I'll just start scribbling on with a little vine charcoal and kind of let whatever lines seem to be making sense like take charge of where the painting goes. Once in a while, I'll fully sketch out uh, what the painting is going to be, but I prefer to let it kind of happen organically. Because when you plan, I feel like when you plan out a painting, it gets stiffer and has less life. Maybe it's just in my head. I like paintings that come together organically rather than things that have been mapped out or
Okay. And do you sometimes find it hard to get into that headspace, the creative headspace? And do you have any rituals or tricks you use to get yourself in that headspace?
keeping a daily routine is kind of important to like treat it as a job. It's not like a hobby that you can like, oh, I guess I'll paint now. Like I wake up, I feed my kids, I take them to school, I come back and I'm in the studio painting from 8:30 till I pick them up from school, and I hang out with them for a little bit, and then I go back into the studio uh, while they are doing homework and hanging out with their mom. And then I put them to sleep, and then I'm usually back in the studio at night. Like I just finished work for the show that I have up now. I was pretty much just down in the studio from 8:30 till 1 1 till 2 o'clock in the morning every night.
Um, you have a very unique visual style. Uh, can you tell me how that developed and maybe how you would describe it yourself?
I when I was studying in Iceland, it was the the art college there. It's more of a conceptual art school. they wouldn't teach you much of the technical stuff. It's like you kind of just have to figure that out. So when I wanted to get my master's, I wanted to get like uh, the opposite education, I guess. And I went to an academic art school, but I just tried to develop the techniques that I learned there into something that I found interesting, or like something that came natural to me. And then I started messing around with the idea of creating like a character that's me, like an avatar that would be like that would be the rules or the guidelines of my working progress or process. Was I would have to include uh, that character in any painting. That was the only rule. So I can do whatever I want, but he has to somehow fit in the painting. So setting those weird rules for me like really opened up a lot of different fun ideas.
My next question was actually about that character.
Yeah, he is he started out as that kind of avatar, uh, alter ego or some sort. I was trying to figure out how can I uh, turn myself into a character in as simplistic way as possible.
Would you say that there are any overarching themes or subjects that you are continually exploring in your work?
Uh, in the past year, it's gotten more like overtly personal. I've been like dealing with more like my psyche, and the paintings have turned more emotional rather than like explorations of what I can do with paint.
Yeah, well, that explains also the kind of the title of the exhibition you have open right now at the Richard Heller Gallery in Los Angeles, where the title of it is Spiritual Paintings for Emotional People. Can you tell us something about the theme of the work there?
Yeah, the theme of the work there, it's like a continuation of I had a show in January in New York. It was called Tender, and all the work was created after the passing of my father, and so I was kind of just dealing with my grief and how I was feeling through the paintings, because I just locked myself in the studio when I was going when that after that happened, and I was just painting how I felt, and it was like my therapy, I guess. So that show was very heavily into grief and sadness, and but this show was more of like getting not getting over grief, but like dealing with grief in a more uh, in a better way. So I like took up meditation. So there's like paintings about how horrible I am at doing stuff like meditation, and uh, yeah, my teaching myself to not take that stuff seriously and not just like laugh it off is like the continuation of dealing with loss. Is the theme of those paintings. There's paintings of me or the character laying drunk, crying, being fed grapes by a hand that's coming into the painting, and there's references to my favorite artists that I was looking a lot into, because I was flipping through art books, figuring out or seeing how other artists have dealt with grief throughout time, and a lot of looking into spirituality and trying to figure it out in myself and through the paintings.
Yeah. And so it's, yeah, it's obvious it's very deeply personal, the work you do. You sometimes get commissioned to do work, or you did. I know you're not taking any commissions now, but I've seen some work you've done for like illustrations for magazines and even music albums and packaging.
Mhm.
And do you have a favorite piece of commissioned work that you've created?
I really loved working with the New York Times, just because it's the New York Times. And when I was studying in San Francisco, that's where everyone like that was the pinnacle of getting an illustration gig for the New York Times. That's when you've made it. And I think that was the last time I said yes to a gig. Oh, the New York Times. Okay, I'm done after this. This is
Okay, Baldur. Those are all of my questions for you.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me in the conversation pit.
I love a good pit.
Okay.